Welcome to this video all about Procreate. I just recently got this iPad. It's the iPad Air 13-inch. The case is from Amazon. I have a matte screen protector. It's supposed to be like a paper-like screen protector, but it's not the paper-like brand. And then I also have the metal nib on the Apple Pencil. I feel like I have mixed emotions about this. I feel like I still like the regular nib that comes with it, but this is nice for note-taking and it feels a lot more like a pen. It also makes very paper-like sounds. I wanted to make an introduction to how to use Procreate. I feel like there's a lot of videos with a lot of different information for very niche things, but I found a few videos that were pretty helpful. I just wanted to simplify it a little bit and then put also a tutorial on how to make a sticker design and how to make your own brushes. I couldn't find any videos that had a little bit of everything in it, so I hope that this video can be that and can be very helpful as a resource of kind of starting from scratch how to use this app. I'm gonna show you how to make a custom canvas so that every time you open a canvas, you can get the same dimensions, or you can make multiple canvases. You're gonna press this add button right here, and you're gonna press this black add button here. You're gonna pick whatever width and height you'd like. You can use inches by going over here, or centimeters or millimeters. I'm gonna do pixels. My favorite size is 4200 pixels by 3200 pixels. I feel like this makes things generally a pretty good quality. And then I make sure that the DPI is at least 300. This makes it so that if anything I paint, I want to turn into print, it will be good enough quality to make a physical item. The next thing I do is go to canvas properties. If you want a white blank canvas, that's perfectly fine. I like a little bit of an off-white canvas just so that if I have any white marks, they can show up as white. So I'm gonna do kind of like an ivory color, and then I'm going to rename the canvas to my canvas template. And then I'm gonna press create. So now I have this kind of off-white color background canvas, and if I go to the gallery, every time I add my canvas template, it will bring up the same exact dimensions with the off-white color. The next thing I would recommend is making a brush pack of all of your most used brushes. This is mine. How you do that is if you go up on the brush library, you could press this add button. You can name it whatever you'd like. Now you have a space that you can fill with all of your most recent brushes or your most used. What I would recommend though is when you're adding a brush, I would duplicate the brush so that you can find it in the original section and you can find it in your most used. So you duplicate it like I did with this 6B pencil, and then you add it to the section that you just made, and then when you go there, you can make a list of all of your most used brushes so that they're much more easier to find and use. So at the end of this video, I'll show you how to make your own brushes, a few of them. Here's an example of one of the ones that I've made as a watercolor brush. I'm definitely not great at this, but I did do some research on just generally how to edit the brushes and what everything means so that the more you practice, the better brushes you can make. But this is helpful to learn even if you're just editing a brush that already exists. Before I get into the tutorials though, I wanted to just give a few tips on how to use Procreate and some things that I learned that really helped me and make the process go a lot quicker and more efficient. A few of these are going to be pretty basic knowledge, so if you have used Procreate before, you might know the first few, but as the video goes on, I'll try to make them a little bit more complicated, things that I didn't know until I did some research. So the first one is if you're trying to make a straight line, you can hold your pen down and it'll make a straight, perfect line for you. If you want it to be a perfect angle, you could hold down the screen and it'll only make perfect angles. If you're trying to make a perfect shape, draw whatever shape you're trying to make, hold your pen down. It'll correct your shape into the most perfect version of it, but if you want a perfect circle, you're gonna hold it down and then you can make a perfect circle. If you want to make a perfect square, they don't do it for rectangles, but you can make a rectangle shape by just holding your pen down. But if you want a perfect square, you can put your finger down and then it'll make a perfect square, same thing. If you want to color fill an object, you'll drop the color from this corner into the shape. And if you want to use your previous color, you're going to hold this down and it'll bring you the previous color you just used. If you get this line around what you're doing, you're going to drag the color, hold your pen down, and slide it to the right to increase the threshold. The next tool that I use very often, if you go to the wrench icon and you go to canvas, you can put on a drawing guide. You can edit this drawing guide. There's 4 different options. For the 2D grid, isometric, and perspective, if you put the assisted drawing on, you'll only be able to make lines in the perspective that you chose. So if you're trying to make a grid, a perfect grid, that's very helpful. I mainly use it for the symmetry tool. And this just makes it so that whatever you draw on one side, you can get on the next side. It makes it a lot quicker, and also it makes it perfect, whatever you're trying to draw, and it's very helpful. If you want to start drawing only on one side and you don't want it to come up on the other side, you can go to the Layers tab and turn off Drawing Assist, and then it will only come up on one side. The next thing that I would recommend is having a customized color palette for the colors that you use most often. This will help you if you are an artist that's trying to keep a certain style. If you stick to one color palette, it doesn't really matter what you draw, your style will kind of be cohesive because of the color palette. So how to do this is, if you go to palettes, you can press this add button, create a new palette. And now when you go to the disc icon, you can pick the colors that you use most and add them to the color palette. If you're trying to see the color value better, you can zoom in on this little circle feature. If you double tap an area, it'll give you the most pure color in that area. For pure white and pure black, you can double tap and zoom out if you want all of the colors back. You can change the title of it in your palettes section. You can just name it My Palette. Another option for palettes is if you are following a strict reference, you can add from a photo. So if you're trying to draw, let's say I was trying to draw this flower reference, I can choose it and it'll give me all of the colors in that photo. So that's very useful if you're trying to get exact colors for a reference photo. The next tool that I use very often is this lasso tool. If you go to the freehand section and you could draw whatever you'd like. If you do color fill, press the icon, it will fill whatever shape you just made with that color that you choose. And then if you take that and you put it on alpha lock, I use alpha lock very often, especially when you're trying to isolate in a portrait. If you're trying to draw only on the face and not on the hair, I'll show you how you use it. You can go to this tool in the classic instead of the disc. You can make the color the same exact color but darker. And I'm going to put on an airbrush brush on just to show you this as an example, make it bigger. So if this layer is alpha locked, that means I can't draw outside of it. I can only draw inside of the shape that I made. So this is really helpful for shadows and highlights. So I'm going to just show you how I use it. Let's say the light source was up here. This is the shadow I'd be making. And then I'm going to make this much brighter, the same color, but much brighter. And this will be the highlight area. So this is just 3 simple colors and it looks very cartoony this way. But if you go to this magic wand tool and you go to Gaussian blur, while it's still an alpha lock, you can make whatever you drew in that section blurred out and this really helps everything kind of smooth out. It just helps a lot with like shading and making things look more realistic. That's how I use Alpha Lock. Another thing that's very helpful is a clipping mask. Let's say I drew a shape. I want to draw something on top of it, but I don't want it to go out into the lines and I want to be able to move it. You're going to make another layer on top and you're going to put a clipping mask on. This makes it so that anything, let me make my brush a little bit smaller. Anything that you make on top of it won't go outside of the lines, but you can move it as if it's a completely separate layer, which is very, very helpful for different drawings. Okay, so this is a drawing that I made where all of the layers are disconnected. So if I wanted to move, let's say I wanted to move this layer, it would only move the stuff that's in that layer, and it can get very discombobulated. So in order to move multiple layers at once without combining them, you just swipe right on all of them, and it makes it so that you can move the entire object without merging the layers. You can also take these layers, you can add them into another project by going to opening a new project and then adding these to the layers. Now I have the exact same drawing in a completely new piece. Let's say I'm drawing hair and I made a mistake. If I want to erase with the same brush that I'm using, you hold the erase button and now you erase with the same hair tool that you were using. This also goes with the smudge tool, and you can use this with any brush. Let's say I add a reference image. This is a really pretty painting from Monica Forsberg. So let's say I was trying to draw over an image. It's probably hard to see all of my lines because this image is so saturated. So you can go to this N button and you can change the opacity of the drawing so that it's much easier to see your sketch lines over top. Another option that you can do if you don't want your reference picture shown in the time-lapse video, you can go to the wrench icon and at insert a photo, you can swipe, insert a private photo, and this photo will not show up on the time-lapse replay. Another way to have a reference image is go to the wrench icon, go to canvas, turn on reference. You can either see your page that you're working on in a smaller pinched out way, or you can have just a regular reference image that stays up while you draw. And it, of course, will not show up on the time-lapse replay. This is very helpful if you make a lot of like cartoonish looking art, but let's say you make a layer of line art and you want to keep this as line art, but you want to also fill it in. You have two options. You could duplicate the layer and you can fill it in that way. One layer will stay just the line art, or you can add a layer, put the line art above the new layer and make it the reference. And then in your new layer, all of your colors will still follow the reference image lines. And so now you have two separate layers. One is the line art and one is the filled layer. If you want to keep the same sizes for a brush, you can slide whatever size you like 56, and press the add button. Now it's a saved size, so no matter what, you can kind of come back to that and use the same. You can also do that with the opacity layer, so you can always have the same opacity. If you're trying to pick up a color that you used previously, you can hold your finger down and it will pick up whatever color is underneath it, the exact color, and you can use that again. If you'd like to add a quick menu like this, you're going to go to the wrench icon, go on Preferences, Gesture Controls, and for quick menu, you can add whatever option. Mine is just the little square right here. And then whatever you'd like the quick menu options to be, you can pick. This recolor option is really helpful because you can go back and recolor to whatever color you were using. If you're not happy with like how shaky a pencil is, if you want your pencil to be more streamlined and kind of be more calligraphy-like, you can duplicate your pencil and go into the settings, go to stabilization, add more streamline and add more stability, and this will make a very calligraphy-esque, there's no shakiness in it. I hope that makes sense. With the color fill tool, you can make a selection, color fill it, and then you can go to feather and you can blur it out as much as you'd like. If you go to Gaussian blur, you could pick how much blur you want and then go to pencil and you can blur it out even more. Or if you just want to blur a certain section of it, just make sure you hit the pencil icon. Another way that you can use the lasso tool is if you freehand select something, you can go into the magic wand and change the saturation, the brightness, the hue, and you can even do any of these adjustments you can do for a certain subject. Now, if you're interested in learning how to make a sticker design, that's this portion of the video. Before I show you how to make a sticker, I'm actually going to show you how to make a Procreate brush. You're going to go to the paintbrush icon and press the addition button in the top right corner. These are all different categories of the properties of your brush stroke. You can play around with all of them to see what they do, but the most important categories is shape and grain. So we're going to go to the shape category. We're going to press edit, import, and then import from source library. Procreate has all of these different sources that we can make the shape of our brush. So I'm going to pick one that has kind of a dull edge because I'm going to be making a watercolor-esque brush. So I picked this one, and then we're going to go to grain right below shape, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll go to grain, edit, import, and then import source library. This is basically like the background of whatever our paintbrush is going to have. So if our paintbrush is more transparent, we'll basically see this texture behind it. So I wanted to find something that looks like a watercolor paper. So I went through a few of them and I settled on one that's called recycled. This is recycled. So you press done with that. And now the most important thing for watercolor brushes specifically is the wet mix category. So dilution, charge, attack, and pull, all of these are the main things that we can mess with. The pull is kind of how much the brush like drags on, and dilution is the brush is diluted, I guess. It's kind of self-explanatory. So I play around with these until I feel like the brush is blendable and like somewhat transparent. And so after messing with it, I got to this. So these are the settings. I'm going to pull back charge, pull back attack, add some pull, and add some dilution. And this gives me a kind of diluted, blendable watercolor brush. You can also go to the properties and change the brush behavior, the maximum size and the minimum size. It's basically when you use that little toggle on the left side, if you add size to it, it's like the max it can be and the minimum it can be. So that's how I make the watercolor brush. Now I'm just going to show you how to make like a stamp brush. So you can turn any image into kind of a stamp that you can use in your brush library. So here I'm just going to draw out in black and white an image. I just did these flowers as an example. I'm also going to use these flowers to create the sticker design. Once you have your image, I'll show you exactly how to turn it into a brush. So after I finish drawing it out, I'm going to crop it into a square. I don't know if you need to do this. This is just how I learned it. You're going to go to the Actions tool and go to Add, and then copy the canvas. Then you're going to add another brush the same way we did before, and with the shape category you're going to press import, but instead of source library you're going to press paste. Then you click the screen with 2 fingers to invert it, and now your brush is made up of that shape. you're going to go to the stroke path and change the spacing, and then properties to change the maximum and minimum size. And then once you press done, you'll see that you have this like stamp brush. Anytime you press your pencil down, you can make this same shape. Okay, now moving on to our sticker design. I drew this out for the last brush, but I'm going to just color it in. Do whatever design that you want to turn into a sticker. You can scan in from a sketchbook and make it digital that way, or you can draw it digitally, but this is my final design I'm going to use. The first thing I'm going to do is merge all of the layers, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer. So now I have two of the same. With the bottom layer, I'm going to turn on alpha lock, and I'm going to press fill layer with the background color that I want the sticker to be. So I fill it with this cream color, and then I'm going to remove the background. This is what that layer looks like. You're going to want to take it out of alpha lock and go to the adjustments tab, go to Gaussian blur, and blur it about 10 to 15%. You go to the lasso tool, make sure it's on the automatic setting, and then click on the blurred out item. Then you add the top layer back and fill in any gaps, and you have your sticker design, and it has no background, it just has this thick border. And then in order to save it, you go to Actions, Share, and then save it as a PNG.